Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tim, and this is another Real Ideal Gear review. I'm doing this review directly from western Montana, overlooking the Bitterroot Mountains. I'll show a couple of pictures in here of where I'm at. I'm up on the mountainside, about halfway up. The top of this mountain, I think, is about 8,500 feet. So about halfway up or so, 2/3 of the way up, something like that. But today we're going to be looking at the Nodus Sector Pilot Blackbird. So take a look at that. This is a really cool watch, and I say cool like there is so much about this watch that I really like. The last couple watches that I've got have really got my attention, and this is one of them for sure. This watch is it's assembled in the United States. Obviously it has some parts that are sourced elsewhere, but this is a great watch. A lot of great qualities to it. So we're gonna go through the 5 characteristics that I typically go through when it comes down to an evaluation of a watch, which is size, fitment, finish, accuracy, and then legibility and lume. So let's start off with size. This is your typical, I'll put the size down below here, but this is kind of your typical pilot size watch. Very easy to wear. It's not really a big watch. It's lightweight. The bracelet on this thing is awesome. It really balances the top portion of the watch, so it sits really easy on your wrist. It doesn't slop around a lot, just because the balance or the distribution of the weight is so good across the entire watch and watch band, or in this case, the bracelet. It's about 12.5 millimeters tall off the wrist, so the height of the watch off the wrist is great. You're not going to run into a lot of issues when it comes to snagging on things with this watch. In addition, you got a sapphire crystal, so if you do, the likelihood of scratching the crystal, very low. But you also have a bezel on here that's DLC coated. This one's DLC coated, so it might over time start to accumulate some scratches and things like that, but I don't think so. I think this watch, the height off the wrist, going back to size, it's pretty low profile as far as that goes. A 39 millimeter case. It's not real wide on the wrist either, and across the wrist, it's just a perfectly proportioned pilot watch. So I really like that. The adjustment. This is awesome. The bracelet that Nodus put together on this watch is incredible. The adjustments that you have, the micro adjusts, are actually inside the clasp. So it has a proprietary clasp that you can micro adjust on the fly, which I love those kind of bracelets. You pay a little bit more for this watch. It's not a cheap pilot watch, but that part right there is awesome, because on a day like today where I'm out in the sun, and my wrist, I can already tell my wrist, the size it's a little bit larger than it was, say, sitting inside a nice cool environment. So that is something that I just love, the micro adjust capability of that clasp. It fits really, really well. There's no doubt that they put a lot of thought into this. The bracelet is a great looking bracelet. It's just well done, and I really like that. The finish of this watch, it's great. The dial is black. You've got the sector lines going across the middle. You've got a green second hand, which I think it's not real, out there. It's not real in your face as far as a color goes. Sometimes it's good, but I think this is a little bit more subdued. So it's different, but it's not radically different when it comes down to just the color that they put on the second hand. And it has an arrowhead on the end, so it's easy to find the second hand if you're timing something. The hands themselves, they look great. So the overall finish of the hands, the second hand, it's just awesome. I'm going to get to the contrast here in a minute, because the contrast is where this watch really shines as far as the finish of everything goes. The case itself has some polished edges along the lug, brushed sides. It's got that kind of twinkle to it, but at the same time, it's not a lot. I compare that to, say, the Wise Adamascus 88, where it has the 904L steel, where it's just high polish. I mean, it just shines. Okay, and that has kind of a dressy feel to it. This doesn't have that dressy feel to it. This still has that pilot look to it, I think, and some of that ruggedness still is there, but there's enough shine in this where it's more than that. It can be used in more than just the casual situations. Could you wear this as a dine out situation? Probably. Formal situation? Probably not. But the bezel on it is a friction bezel. And the finish on the friction bezel that I have here is the DLC coat. So this goes either direction. As far as timing goes, you can move this. It's not unidirectional clicking bezel. It is a friction bezel, so it slides back and forth. One of the issues I think I have with that, it's very, very minor, is that it does tend to move a little bit, but it doesn't have the clicking bezel anyway, so you're kind of giving that up when you don't have a click bezel, unidirectional bezel like that, for a friction bezel. So the friction bezel is just it's gonna be more susceptible to that. We'll put it that way. So the finish, it's great. The finish on the hands, I love the hand set on here. It has kind of a sword set hand set on here, where it's wide at the base and narrow at the top. They cover the right areas on the watch dial. The dial itself is awesome. There's a texturing in the center of the watch that has some kind of granular surfacing to it. You've got the sector lines that go across the 9 o'clock to the 3 o'clock. You've got another line that goes from the 6 o'clock to the center. You also have a day date on here. I have the day date on this one. And I love it because I love where the day is. I love where the date is. I like the 6 o'clock position. I especially like the way they did the day, where it is above and on top of the 6. Now, if it was on the side, they kind of run into each other, but this is where they have them separated. And I think the separation is very, very much worthwhile. So it's just awesome. As far as I think the finish is one of the best things. You've also got a beveling on the crystal. So if you look at the crystal on here, there's just a little bit of a bezel on there. I'll try and get a photo up there. But that's another nice little touch on this. Flat crystal, it's sapphire, not really susceptible to anything as far as scratches and hairline scratches like that. You should be fine. Accuracy, let's talk accuracy. NH35, now this is one of the reasons why I bought this watch, was that it was an in-house regulated movement. So I got a card, I'll put a picture up here of the card that I got, and the card shows the different positions that they regulated or that they measured with a time grapher, but there's no numbers to say what those positions represent as far as error goes. So on the one hand, I'm glad they took the time to regulate it and they put that information onto a card. At the same time, I have no numbers to know exactly what that means. When I put the watch on my time grapher, and when they sell the watch, it's supposed to be plus or minus 10 seconds. So when I put the watch on a time grapher, on one of the positions, I got 12 seconds. The other ones were less than, but one of them was 12. I was like, this advertised as plus or minus 10. It's close, not quite what I was looking for as far as accuracy goes. I was thinking you could probably get a little bit less than 10, but it's an NH35. So let's be fair to the movement that's in there. The NH35 is not going to be something you can get down to like 1 second in 4 different positions. So I'm okay with it. I'm not 100% pleased with it. I'm just recognizing the fact that it's an NH35. They tried to regulate it. They got it pretty close. And that's kind of where I go. Once I get it around 13, 14 or less, I try to get under 10 when I regulate a watch, especially in one position, like a dial up or 12 o'clock down position. But I try to get, in those couple of positions because they're worn and they're held in those positions the longest, in my opinion. So anyway, accuracy is good. It's a typical NH35. I haven't seen any changes in how I've been using it. As far as legibility and lume goes, legibility, fantastic. I love sector dial watches. This is a pilot watch. It does a great job of just emulating that pilot watch, that sector watch look. It has a little bit of that art deco piece. I think that's where the sector dial design overall comes from. And they have a whole series of watches, sector pilot watch, dive watches. The Nodus company has a bunch of these. So check that out on their website to see the different case designs, different dial designs. The field watch is another really, really good looking watch as far as I'm concerned. I'm kind of a field watch, pilot watch aficionado. I love the looks. I love how they are simple, easy to use. And that's what attracted me to this. The Blackbird version of this, the black version of this, I think really stood out because the bezel was black, the dial was black. The second hand was kind of a subdued green, really clean dial to look at, high contrast. I mean, you've got numbers and you've got the hands, black on white, and just a really brilliant white. The hands, there's something about those hands and the numbers that they're awesome. You have the 12, 9, and the 3. Are different sizes than the other numbers. So legibility wise, you can orient the watch really easy. You can see the sector part of it, the 12, 9, and 3, the quadrants. That is also part of the design as well. Just a really great legible watch to look at. So, and the timing bezel, easy to look at. It's a little narrow though, but they're trying to keep the watch compact, so it's not a real wide bezel. So your numbers are going to be smaller, but they're there, they're easy, black on white. The pip on the bezel is lumed. The hands are lumed. The second hand arrowhead is lumed. The numbers are lumed. Really, really good lume. Lasts all night. This is definitely, they've done an excellent job with the lume on this one. Is it near the top? No. The SWC bunker will certainly outdo this one, but it is good. It's a solid all-night lume that you're going to get out of this. Water resistance is 100 meters. So when you're looking at wearing this watch for any circumstances, go right ahead. I think this watch does everybody good as far as that goes. The clasp, I'm going to go through the highlights here. The clasp is just incredible. It's a proprietary clasp that they have, and they did a great job with this. It fits really well. It's lightweight, great design. The color scheme is awesome. The NH35 is solid, or 36, it's not 35. NH36, because it's day-date, is solid. You're not going to get much. It's a solid, reliable movement. The regulation, I wish it was a little bit better than it was when it came to me. And the numbers on the bezel, kind of wish they would have loomed the numbers. I like the lume, and for the price, they should have loomed the numbers on the bezel. This is where I think the price probably is a little bit higher than some of the factors or some of the characteristics in this watch that probably could have put a little bit more lume into the bezel, I think, in that regard. Extremely comfortable. It's all around one of my favorite watches, sector dial watches. This is one of my favorite watches. You know, with the lume and the regulation issues, this is like a 9.5 out of 10. If you advertise the regulation, you really got to make sure it happens. If you're going to have the lume like this, you really should have it on the bezel, especially when the watch itself is going to cost what it cost. There's just other watches out there that have better lume on the bezel than this. And the regulation, I think if they'd have done that, it would have, in my mind, solidified it. I'm a little hesitant about factory regulated watches, and I tried it to see what it was like, and because I knew the factory regulation on an NH36 wasn't going to be, you're not going to get, 1 second off. It's just not that kind of a movement. But to say that you get a plus or minus 10, you need to get a plus or minus 10. So those are a couple of dings that we had in this one. It's 9.5 out of 10. Is it a recommend? I highly recommend this watch. Just be cautious or be aware of the price. The price is higher. And but at the same time, I think it's worth it. It's getting on the edge of maybe not being worth it, but I think it's worth it. I like these kind of watches, and that's why I bought it. I think for those that are not really interested in pilot watches as much, may look at the price and say, there's other pilot watches out there that may get you a little bit more for the money. And you're probably right. So it's kind of on that boundary as far as cost and benefit goes. So there you go. This is the Nodus Sector Dial Pilot Watch Blackbird version with a DLC coated bezel. My name is Tim. This has been a Real Ideal Gear review, and we'll catch you guys next time.